Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the Founders Funding Couch, our 73rd OPN event. And we're excited today. We've got a great keynote, a great panel, and we're excited to jump right into it. So today we're going to do a few things a little bit differently. We're changing it up a little bit, but we want to thank all of our sponsors, Miller Thompson from Legal, Startup here, Toronto, and the City of Toronto, System Buying, our hosting partner, Mindful, Flow and Vibe Tea, and of course, resourcing company, Hardboot Communications. So if you have any questions, feedback, comments, please add them into the chat window, and we'll be happy to try and jump in and chat to those. But we welcome everybody. If you can do any clapping, any of that great stuff to keep everybody driven and moving forward, feel free to do that with the provided buttons. Welcome, everybody. Why don't we just do this quickly on the panel side? So why don't we start with you, Ryan? Why don't you give us a little bit of a background on who you are, what you're up to, and then one thing nobody will know about you.
So yes, my name is Ryan O'Neill Knight. A founder of a few social enterprises, the main one being Detailing Knight, a mobile waterless car cleaning company. One of the co-founders of the Afro-Caribbean Business Network Foundation of Canada, and also a co-founder of a co-working space called Empowered for X that's here in the center of Brampton, working with social enterprises and helping businesses like really put an ecosystem around them to support them. Something that nobody would know about me. Oh man. I think my brother is the only one that knows how much of a geek I am for anime, because we used to watch it together. We did binge Naruto and Bleach. And one of my favorite anime is Death Note. Nobody would know that.
Oh, that's awesome. I like it. I like it. Anime fiend. That's good. Trung, you're up.
My name is Trung. I'm the founder and CEO of Access. We are a IoT connected device company that creates hardware to automate existing window shades, targeting both residential as well as commercial real estate. One thing that no one knows about me, man, that is a tough one. I am a non-technical founder. So I do not have an engineer background, either in hardware or software. That's a good one.
Perfect. I like it. All right, Michael, you're up.
Good morning, everyone. So I'm based in Ottawa, but grew up in Toronto. I can tell you some stories from Toronto. I'll save that to the end when I have to tell people what they don't know about me. So our company does network analytics. We target customers like Bell, Rogers, TELUS. We're trying to expand into enterprise, smart cities, industrial IoT. We help them run their networks. We have the ability to actually ship and deploy without any operation staff, so we're somewhat ideal for COVID. We just did our initial close on Friday, April 24th. So we closed the round during tough times. Raised less than I had intended, but raised sufficient to run for 12 months. And so very focused on growing with customers and planting more seeds through these tough times. So as the market recovers, I'm in more markets. As far as what people wouldn't know about me, there's a high school in Toronto called Father Henry Carr. It's up in Etobicoke. When I was in high school, I think grade 12, I put the school up for sale. They got a lot of phone calls. I must have put 100 real estate signs all over the school property.
Oh, that's fantastic. How much did you make off the sale?
I didn't make anything besides a lot of humor.
Oh, that's awesome. Sofiane, do you got one thing that no one will know about you?
Oh my goodness. Well, I didn't think about it. No. Yeah, I think like Trung, the two businesses that I founded many businesses. That the two businesses that I sold was in the tech. One is in the fintech, and the other one was in the tech related to printing system. And none of them I was a tech guy. I remember like really trying to understand why my data science were taking me to the fintech, and reading in the night, try to understand, but I gave up. I just managed the operation and I trust them. So I'm not a tech guy at all.
Oh, that's awesome. And the reason why I always go to one thing that someone doesn't know about you, I do this in classes and talks and everything else, is because we all need a unique identifier. And sometimes myself, I'm terrible with names. So for me, it's easier for me to remember that one thing about you that nobody else really knows because it's unique. So just to throw something for myself, because I avoided me last time saying anything, I always have my go-to, but I can hold my breath underwater for 3 minutes. And so I guess that I'm thinking about doing one of those deep dives one of these days. But at this point, I don't even know why it's a skill. So I haven't really seen any benefit of it yet, but one day I may need it. So, but regardless, let's jump right into this, guys. So thank you very much again for joining today and for sharing a little bit about yourselves. And I think what I wanted to first start with is, and maybe Trung, you can jump into this because I know we've had a couple conversations on this, but what has COVID done not only to the environment that the whole world's participating in, I guess, but what has COVID done for you guys on how you've looked at your business? What types of changes have you had to make? And then from those types of changes you've made, what were your next steps on looking for funding?
So we had to speak to a lot of our lenders because we do hold a lot of inventory. So we did raise a lot of debt financing for inventory. And we were able to postpone any monthly interest payments. So all those payments were also deferred. And we really just had to look at our burn. I think we reduced our burn by 3 times just by renegotiating some of the terms, the payment terms. We did qualify for the wage subsidy, so we benefit from that for salaries. And even our lease, I highly recommend just, if you're working in a co-working space, just get out of there and just save money and just work from home. I think it was surprising how easy the transition was from working in an office space to working from home. And, I looked at the all-in cost per employee for our office space, and it was about $1,000 an employee, which adds up when you have 15 employees. So, just by getting out of that, you're cutting out $15K a month in expenses. So really just hammering down the burn and extending the runway because right now there's a lot of uncertainty in the market. So a lot of the VCs and the angel market's really inactive, but a lot of VCs are just pulling back and just waiting to see where the market goes and the impact of the stimulus packages. But, I think it's just really extending that runway and finding the right VCs that are still deploying capital because those VCs that do have a fund and do have the capital in place, they have to deploy that capital. So they are actively looking, but there's these other VCs that are really just family offices or funds that can basically step back and say, hey, we're not investing right now. So distinguishing who you're speaking with between those type of groups will impact your fundraising going forward. So that's what we've been doing, just benefiting from the grants, the government subsidies, and just really focusing on that burn.
Michael, how did you guys, as you mentioned, you just finished doing a closed round. So how have you guys looked at this pandemic towards your business? Not only just getting out and opening up new doors and having conversations, but what things did you have to change on, as Trung mentioned, on the burn side? What did you guys shift to?
Yeah, so I think I would say, obviously, a lot of effort to get that round closed. And I would say customers went quiet for a while. Everyone was scrambling to figure out how they're going to operate, especially the network operators, right? Their networks were overloaded. The traffic profiles changed considerably from, instead of coming from office buildings, coming from residences. So they got pretty quiet for a while. They're now coming out of that, trying to figure out what the new normal is going to be. And when I use that term, I mean new normal in the context of the next 6 to 12 months. I don't mean in the next decade, right? I think things as a vaccine, when a vaccine comes out, I think we'll get back to more of the traditional normal. There will definitely be some things changed. A whole bunch of people have been exposed to a different way of operating, whether that's how they shop for groceries or how they work. So I think you'll see some of the changes that are in place now will continue. Definitely finding every program there was and how to cut costs, right? Cutting your costs, extending your runway is critical. I think we cut our direct salary costs 30% in the first month using different programs. So for sure there's as founders, like go to zero and take CERB, right? There are ways to cut your costs and leverage those programs, and CERB's a pretty easy one. You've got the banks, the $40,000 from the bank that you can get, and it's interest-free till January 2023, and 10K is forgivable. So if you pay it off December 2022, you only have to pay back 30K, right? So technically there's a free 10K. Of the programs, like there's a lot of programs that existed already that have been expanded. So you've got one of the better programs federal is IRAP, right? NRC IRAP. Great program. You need to get a relationship with an ITA. Even if you're not in with IRAP yet, go see IRAP, right? They just launched another $250 million. The first round of proposals closed April 29th, but you will see it again, right? So IRAP's a great one. NSERC is another good area. And NSERC, though, you typically need to partner with a college or university, and they're looking to put money out, right? They have increased funding, right? The governments that have dollars programs, they're trying to find ways to help out companies. There's a good place. The Minister Jolie just announced almost another $900 million for the RDAs, right? And RDAs would be like FedDev that operates here in Ontario. They're putting money out to help startups. So you need to, I think, watch the news every day because these programs are coming out quick. You have to apply quickly to them, right? Don't waste time. Even if your application isn't perfect, you need to get into that system. CEWS, if you can apply for CEWS, that's a 75% subsidy. I'm assuming everyone's done the 10%, right? The 10% was a no-brainer at payroll. You just deducted 10% from your taxes back. So the CEWS will get you another 65%. The summer student program, they extended that as well, right? So the summer student program from the feds, they would pay up to 50% of a student's salary. It's now 100% up to minimum wage. But you need to go to your member of parliament to get into that program, right? So you need to stay active with all of that. There are other programs where you can do work sharing. Is get a group of people in a company and say, let's agree to only work 4 days a week or 3 days a week to get your costs down. So drive your costs down as much as you can. Get out of leases as if you can. I'm fortunate. I was able to get out and not incur any monthly costs. So cut your burn rate down. We don't know how much runway we're going to need, right? So the lower you get your costs down, the longer you extend your runway, the better your positioning is to pivot and adjust as things come along. Look for small revenue opportunities, professional services. Even if you're only going to get a few $1,000s, it gets some business going, gets you to adapt and adjust, and helps your cash flow.
Well, that's all good stuff. Thank you, Michael, for that. And it follows along the same lines of getting that burn down. Ryan, on your end, you guys have a bunch of different programs that you've been working through. You have some businesses that I'm sure you've had to make some shifts to because of COVID. Do you want to dive in a bit about that on how you've been helping companies and the things that you've done to frame up your bottom line?
Yeah, and like Michael was saying, that trimming the fat is paramount right now, and really realizing that you can actually run your company effectively with like less of the frills and the fluff, you know? And even for detailing nights, when we're doing our car cleaning, we shifted to the city needing their vans that they still use for homeless outreach to be steam cleaned and disinfected. So that was something that kind of stabilized us. And then we did apply for a CERB, and we're looking to apply for the wage subsidy. So everything helps you stabilize, but then when you're stabilized now, how do you pivot and what is coming around the horizon? And a big thing that was announced before COVID hit, and it was in 2019, was the government funding social enterprises. And they had announced the $800 million fund for social finance. And they want to see both nonprofits start creating income generating activities and for-profit companies start to think of how to impact the community. So this is where I'm really coaching a lot of our businesses in our community to start thinking about how do you use your company to actually impact change or create change, because you're going to be able to find grants and different investment type funding through the government and through other bodies such as Mars, and I think McConnell Foundation is part of it, if you actually have I won't say an essential need, but start thinking about what makes your company essential to the community. If you're just creating the next kind of social media thing or app and widget that has no real intrinsic value, you're not going to be able to tap into this new type of funding for social enterprises. And even the initial 50 million that was announced, I think the first deadline was February 10th. You could get up to $100,000 as a grant for your for-profit social enterprise. So shifting from just nonprofits getting grants to for-profits that make a difference. And also the big thing that we talk about through our working groups when we're helping people write grants and do the applications is finding nonprofits that match the mission of your for-profit. Because even though you're not a nonprofit and traditionally couldn't get grants, if you find a nonprofit that matches what you're trying to change in the community, you can now collaborate with them and they take the lead on grants and you're able to access, let's say up to 100,000 or more. When the social finance fund comes out, that's going to be millions of dollars in investment. You're now in position to get that money because you actually found a way to improve the community. And you're not just all about profit. You have that triple bottom line and you can really do good in the community while still earning an income or generating profit.
That's awesome. And is shred credits and other components like that fit into this grant writing? Or is that something that is kind of fits outside of that spectrum?
It is outside. We do have a company in our network that works with tax incentives, like government incentives. So shred is a part of that. The 75% you can get off for expansion with EDC, so the Export Development of Canada. And the great thing is that now that a lot of us have shifted to online, we automatically become global companies without really realizing it. So getting in touch with the Trade Commissioner's Office and EDC, the Export Development of Canada office, to talk about how you can expand to other countries and deliver your service, or you're sending your product and exporting it and importing your products. Now you have to start thinking about how to do that on a global scale. And there's supports for that. I mentioned that 75%. Just to create your marketing strategy, you can get up to 75% of it covered by EDC from, so the person that creates your strategy, 75% of it could be covered. And I know right now you can't be going to trade shows, but they also cover part of your fees for attending trade shows in other countries that you're looking to expand into. So the tax credits are a big way to recoup a lot of the costs that you're going to be putting out to expand.
That's awesome. And Sofiane, do you have any suggestions as well on the government side or even on the investor side that you see as gateways for startups to start looking at?
No, it's actually a great piece of advice that you gave guys here about government funding. What I can say is, like, it's definitely a great leverage that businesses should use, to go to a dilutive investor. If the fact that you, as I told you, the fact that investors are using the amount of money investing for businesses, like, as I said, if you are raising 1 million, if 6 months ago I was writing a check of 1 million, now I'll give you 500,000. So the other extra money that you can get from the different, source of non-dilutive funding is a fantastic leverage that you should absolutely come and I like, probably is one of the top thing that you can put forward and ahead, to the businesses, to the investors, saying that you secure that amount of money from the government or from all the sources that you mentioned, guys, because it's the way you can say, okay, you know what, the 500,000 is still okay, but we got the difference from other sources. There's definitely good leverage.
Trung, when you were doing some research in the last little while on different ways to support the business, what became what was your goal? What were you trying to reduce your burn down to, and were you able to offset a lot of that expense to hold you off? And what was that time period, 6-8 months before you could do that next round? And
funny enough, we were in the middle of our round and everything was secure. We were doing our diligence and then COVID hit. So it really put a pause. One thing I will say is that if you are raising a round right now and you find a strong lead, I'm sure everyone's heard about the BDC matching funding program. The final details aren't released yet, but I was told that it is an uncapped convertible note at I think their lending rate plus 4% or so. 3-year term. So that's great. It provides technically non-dilutive funding or funding at a higher valuation when it converts at the next round. And that's a matching up to, I believe, $2.5 million. Now that's BDC. If you're a clean tech company with trailing 12 months of 250,000 in revenue, EDC will come in as a co-investor in the current round at the same terms of the lead. So technically, if, for example, I was raising $2 million US, if I'm only able to secure $1 million US, EDC will match that $1 million, and then BDC will also match that $1 million, obviously with different terms and whatnot. But that's what the government's doing, and that's I think that's great. It helps really provide liquidity when a lot of the VCs are pulling back. So, like the panelists mentioned, if originally you could only raise, if your original target was $2 million, but the VC is only going to give you $1 million, take that $1 million and then tap into EDC and BDC.
Oh, that's fantastic news. So it seems like there's a lot of bodies that are really pulling together. The full details haven't come out everywhere, but I think we have to look at it is that you need to really have your hand on the pulse here and need to be digging in to find out who's offering what and what the opportunities are for your business throughout this process. There's also some other initiatives that they provided just for individuals to be able to find some personal finance. I'm not sure if everybody's gone to that extent. I think there was some for contractors and things like that, $2,000 a month to help students as well as small businesses. So now that we've kind of got all these things tied together, Michael, you mentioned that you've been able to really drive down the cost of your business and now support it. Where does that put you over the next, say, 3 to 6 months? Does it put you in a position where you're going to push out the next raise, push out your revenues? What is your forecast for that time period while you're kind of going through and adapting to all these new measures to get funding?
Yeah, so I think in some regards, unless you're in a business that's spiked like Zoom or something like that, for most of us, you're in survival mode now, right? So what I'm doing is forecasting, more negative on the revenue side, and what can I do on the cost side to keep me close to that 12 months, right? So I think all of my decision making is, you've got cash, what more cash can you bring in, and how do you always have 12-month of runway in front of you to deal with these uncertain times? I think that's what we all need to do to protect the investment we've all made in our companies along with our investors, is how do you protect it? And there are dollars out there right now, right? Definitely funds that were raised, they have to put that money to work. I think the real challenge for us is after we get through these next 6 to 12 months is where's the new money going to come from? So a lot of those funds, I think, will have put those dollars to use. Where's the next set of funds and how long will it take for those to show up? And my personal view is it could be 8. We might not need to survive for 12 months. We might need to survive for 18 to 24 months before some liquidity for the startup type companies shows up again, right? So I think we should be thinking about that. How do we get some revenue up, and how do we keep a low run of costs for 18 to 24 months? And how do we leverage the programs? And more programs will show up, right? You definitely have to stay in tune, listen to the news, network with your peers, find out which programs work well and are easy to access and which ones are more difficult. But definitely, I think we should all be thinking 12 to 24 months runway.
No, that's a good point. So if you're going 12 to 24 months, that gives you some time to start to plan out. I've balanced my company out. I'm at break even. If I can find some extra sales, that's going to help me get a little bit above so I can hire the right people as I start to come out of this. Hopefully it becomes a V-shaped versus a U-shaped exit from this corona piece. So Ryan, inside of this, when you've tied all of these things together, where do you find the most people are getting the most success when you guys are putting grants together for them? Where do you see the government's really getting behind people? Is it the matching for non-for-profit and for-profit? Which one do you see that the government's really getting behind to help move the needle?
Yeah, and like the ones that are flowing faster are the ones that directly involve like vulnerable populations. So if you're doing things with youth, low income, persons with disabilities, there's about a list of 15 where, let's say in the region of Peel, they're dispersing $1 million to those types of organizations right away. One sec, you're my family.
That's okay. That's okay.
Work from home.
Yeah, it's perfect. It's perfect. So I guess just to give some background on one of the things, and this happened back in 2008 when I started my first company. One of the things that we had done, and I did preface this into another talk at one point, was that I decided that because everything was hitting all at once, how was I able to control and manage this going forward? And because you're doing so many things as a business, you're spending money in different spots. You're not always appreciative of taking a pause, taking a moment, and trying to better understand where those costs are coming from. And one of the things that I had done was I canceled my credit cards and decided that this would be a fast way for me to deal with the outfall of it. And then I could patch back what I actually needed, because it made me focus in on everything that was coming in. Why was this here? Where was this? And what it did is it actually allowed me to cut an extreme amount from my bottom line to balance out what I was doing going forward. So I think sometimes we have teams, they're building things, they're paying for plugins, they're paying for lots of stuff, and you don't always pay attention to what's coming in and coming out. And I think from an expense standpoint, when you're trying to better balance your bottom line, sometimes you have to really take a deep look at your expense line and figure out, what am I spending all of these dollars on? And does it make sense at this point to be spending those as we're trying to come out of this now pandemic versus the financial crisis that we had before? So just little things, tricks and traits that you can look at to better position yourself as you guys move forward as well. Go ahead.
Can I add something, Jeffrey?
Yes.
Yes. I think one of the unfortunately with this sad moments here that we are living with the COVID, I think if I must highlight one positive point is the fact that people will learn something fundamental, that is running things with less or no money at all and be efficient. If I can share very quickly an experience, in one of the company that we co-founded 10 years ago with my former business partners, and we failed for one reason, I think, is because we raised funds. It's funny to say, but we raised so much money. And the moment we were all, former investment banker or corporate workers, etc. But the moment we raised the funds, we started investing the money the way we had in mind, which was coming from corporate world or wherever. We know that we have to take office, we have to hire X number of salespeople, we take the fancy CRM, etc., because we didn't have the time to think we had the money. And very quickly, our business plan. This is why I'm saying, like, when you share a business plan with the investor, I mean, from my experience, I never saw a business plan that were realistic, that really happened. When people, draw the line and saying, in year one I do this, year two I do this. I never saw this. I know if someone saw this, I would love to share, because life is different and people will not always jump on your product. So it's what happened to us. We didn't really reach the goal that we had to do, and we had to stop very quickly, and it's very violent. And the second fintech that I co-created was the one that we did the opposite. We thought like probably we spend 200% of our time thinking about, as Michael said, how you can reduce the cost to maximum, how you can achieve the goal X by zero money or the minimum. And it's funny because at that moment your brain is working greatly. It's very efficient, and we sold the company 2.5 years after to a bank. So I'm saying, by raising like probably way less, and it's like the money that's from angels or our own money. What I'm saying by this is it's not always easy to apply what I'm saying, because you need a certain moment of fuel. But do you really need as much money as we are thinking out there? Certainly not, because when the money is a certain way available, people will have the tendency to get it and spending, and then after running out of the money. And so as an investor, I'm always afraid about people coming 6-7 months after saying like, did bad decisions. So you can't have the time to manage them every day. But without the money or minimum available money, you think differently. You think about how you achieve the goal with the less revenue, cash. So you will probably rather than hiring, you outsource, or you can build yourself, or you can always, there's so many tools out there that can help you, to replace. I have some tools that I can replace the whole sales team just with the tool. So there's a way you can achieve things, but with less amount of money. I just wanted to point this point.
No, that's perfect. And I think at the end, it all comes down to is how can you be as efficient as possible without having to spend gobs of money to solve those problems. Because at the end of the day, you're solving a problem for other businesses. So figure out how you can get out to market to solve that problem. You may have to go a little bit slower than your fast rush that you were looking at. But if you can slow things down enough that you can control and maintain that spend, you're going to build longevity into your business. But you're also going to find clever ways that are going to help you grow in time. And that's key to everything. So I think, jump right in, Ron, yeah.
Because with Sofiane, you being now stepped into the investor role, but having gone through that kind of two different paths, that's what's really going to come out of this, is that investors are going to know where you're kind of fluffing up your business plan and where are things that could be trimmed. Because everybody in this time might have become more efficient. Michael was saying he's been able to reduce 25% of his run rate. Now, when you see that in a business plan and that 25% is included, you're like, listen, come back when you've actually dissected this and gone through your efficiencies, because now the bullshit is really exposed, right? So investors are going to be attuned to where you're just fluffing it up.
Well, there's some great learning in that. And it's interesting that we do with some of the companies that we invest in or work with. I can tell all of our companies, you don't need to hire 15 people this year. But you know what? The company doesn't want to hear that because they've spent the last 2 years struggling to build a company to get someone to invest. And when you tell them to cut costs and to shrink their team and to balance everything out, they don't want to hear that. But then in 8 months, when they've got no funds and they burn through everything and they're laying everybody off, they realize, man, I shouldn't have gone that approach. Because sometimes we think that if we hire more, we're going to do more. We actually haven't figured out how to be efficient inside of that. And as much as I can preach it, it doesn't matter. You just have to keep myself. I bring it back up to the company again in 2 months and say, hey, you know what? You've hired too many people. Are you sure you're going to be able to coach everybody and get everybody ramped up to what you're looking to do? So there is a gap in learning, but it's because not everybody's gone through it and not everybody's always open to make those changes when they feel that the money's going to help them drive real quick. And sometimes you just have to balance out where you're allocating those funds and making sure that you are supporting it on a sales and a delivery standpoint versus thinking, I've got to get more functionality. I've got to get more people to take some of this weight off my business when you haven't really figured out how you're actually going to sell into a market. So there's a good balance on how you want to articulate those components. So, but super valid points for sure.
Yeah, Jeffrey, I would add, I think what you need is accountability in your P&L. So I think on one hand, it's easy to understand how to manage your cash spend down, but you do have to make investments, right? So if you're not out in the market trying to get customers and making some investment on the product, the top line won't happen. But you need accountability on those investments you're making and probably a finite period of time, right? So if you are deciding, if someone says I was going to add 10 people, maybe you add 5 now, don't do the 10, and then look for accountability, which is in 3 months that what I'm expecting for this investment, is it happening or not? Because if it's not, I need to pull back a bit, right? So I think you have to be very responsive to the market dynamics and watch your investment to cash, right? Protect that, right? That's the most valuable thing you have is your cash, right? That's your tool to use, and you got to protect it.
For sure. Well, you know what? We're just getting good now and we're really tying this in, but unfortunately we're at 11. So we're going to have to make a pause, but I want to thank you guys. Please stay because we'll do a group selfie or a Zoom selfie. But I do want to thank you guys very much for all your valuable information. I've got a ton of notes here, but I think you guys have really hammered the system, the economics of the business, the governments, and figured out what can I do to help support my business and your going forward. I think one thing that you guys really talked about was trimming your bottom line, but learning what your burn rate is and being efficient. But I think one thing that really stood out, and Michael, you just brought it up, which is accountability. I think we all deserve to have accountability. I think we all know we want to be our own boss, if that's what you want to say. But at the end of the day, You're accountable to your customers. You're accountable to anybody inside your business that works on your team. But I think you need to create accountability from even above that, which is, if I'm going to take money, can I have somebody that drives me to make sure I'm successful? So who do I call every day to make sure that I'm going through the problems that I have, I'm working those out, and I'm hitting the targets and the goals that I still want to achieve, so that in 6 months or 12 months from now, we're not having the same discussion that said, I balanced my business for 12 months, but I haven't grown, I haven't done anything because I was in survival mode the whole time. So think about how you can tie in the right people to help you grow. I want to thank everybody. If you're interested in joining a panel or being a keynote or jumping into the fund or attending one of our next events, feel free to check out opn.ninja. And we're excited to continue helping everybody